Hey y'all, welcome to Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. I'm Mandy. I'm just a mom sitting down having real conversations with real Texas parents about what's going on across our state. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Robbye Kirkpatrick. Robbye is a successful businesswoman in the real estate development industry. She is a mother of 4, and she has now co-founded an organization called Texas Transformed, where she is ready to take her skills and business acumen and apply it to improving our schools. Robbye, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I am so excited to finally get you to share all of your knowledge and expertise with the parents and the patriots of Texas, because you saw a problem, and as a very successful businesswoman, you are used to solving problems, but when you looked into the education space, you realized, oh my goodness. And that was, I guess, the impetus for Texas Transformed?
Yes. So this goes way back. My first job was at a company called Trammell Crow Company, which is known as a developer, but I was working on the brokerage side of the business. And I moved from the Dallas headquarters to Los Angeles, and our first client out there was the Los Angeles Unified Headquarters, which is the second largest school district in America. Mm-hmm. At the time, they were short high schools, so they were doing what was called the Big Dig, and they were building as many schools as fast as they could. Okay. And I learned during that process that despite the fact that they had a $7 billion real estate budget, mm-hmm. they had a 50% dropout rate in the 10th grade. And so as a 24-year-old person, that information did something to me. It became a big question mark, like what is happening? Mm-hmm. And so the superintendent and I spent some time talking about why schools fail, why this is happening. I ultimately left corporate world, went and became an inner city public school teacher in one of the worst performing schools in America. It was a Title I school. It was a performance improvement school, which the equivalent in Texas is a school that's about to be taken over mm-hmm. because the TEA has said they failed too long. Right. In California, they don't take over their schools. So it was just a school that was allowed to continue failing. So I spent 4 years as an English teacher in this school, getting a front row seat onto why big urban school districts fail. And I learned more than anybody, really, there in that position. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, I have 4 kids. They've mostly been in public schools their entire life until very recently I took the younger 2 out. They're now in a one-on-one school. And I have been navigating, as a working mom, what is going on in our public schools. And my kids have attended a very well-known, very popular, very high-performing public school. And in that public school, no one taught them cursive writing, no one taught them explicit grammar, no one taught them spelling. And so we had to fill in gaps over the years of those pieces. Now, the high school, we're having a better experience with my oldest daughter in the high school, except for one English teacher in AP English. They read one book, and it was the story of Columbine High School shooting in AP Junior Year English. So this, what's going on with schools has been on my heart and mind for almost my entire adult life, mm-hmm. Almost my entire career. And so I've sort of lived in this strange world of real estate and public schooling and how to fix public schooling. So we started, my partner, Ashley Cash, and I, who's been on the show, we started Texas Transformed around April, May, and we have a big agenda, as you know. And so yeah, that's how this all got started. Yep.
So one of the big agenda items is digging into the data to give you answers.
Yes.
Right? The numbers don't lie, and you've got a lot of numbers. So let's talk about ERG, what it is, and how you are trying to revolutionize the way we look at K through 12 spending and what's going on in our schools utilizing it.
Yes. So backing up a little bit, all of these problems that we have with schooling are leadership and culture problems first. Mm-hmm. Okay. So in order to understand what's going on in leadership in any organization, if it's a business or a sports team or anything, they have big data on what they're doing. Yeah. And for a long time, you've seen the movie Moneyball, right? And so you know that Billy Bean transformed the entire baseball system by using data, and now every sports team does this.
Right.
What we want to do is do that same thing with public schooling information. Okay. And we already have the data. the Texas Education Agency collects the data from the schools, its test scores, its financial spending, everything. And they produce A through F, as you know, A through F scores. And then there's another group that for 25 years has been also tracking the data, and they share a more detailed and in-depth view of what's happening. They tell a little bit different story. It's just a different lens on the same data. That group is called Education Resource Group. It was started by a turnaround CEO, so a business guy who was used to turning around companies, and he got interested in schooling like I did. And so they have a data set that is widely known in the state. It's known by our legislators. It's known by superintendents. It's known by leaders of school boards, some of them. But nobody wants it to be public because it's very convicting, and it's it makes everything super transparent. And nobody in this system is benefiting from things being transparent, especially if they're failing.
Right.
And the reason it continues to be opaque and not transparent is because there's lots of people finagling and funding to keep it very opaque.
There's a lot of money at stake here. So here in Texas, for our viewers may not know, last year we spent $100 billion or $18,125 per student.
Yes.
That is a lot of money. And 60% of it is not going into the classrooms.
Right.
So when you're talking about reasons to maybe, I call it hiding the banana, we're not really talking about what's going on and how we can really improve it. It's because we've got all these vendors and different providers that they have their money in that taxpayer-funded cookie jar. That it's not necessarily what the numbers is telling us needs to happen.
Well, what the numbers are telling us is that there's $7 billion in waste. And so our legislature just gave the school system $8.5 billion more, which is wonderful, except it comes with no way of measuring how that impacts student performance. So everyone is cheering and excited, and I'm excited because I think they should, I am for education, and I wouldn't mind so much that we're spending all this money if the outcomes were fantastic, but the outcomes are horrible.
That's right.
At every place we test the kids, they're failing.
The kids are failing, and the teachers are not being paid what they should be paid for their profession. I say they've been artificially depressed for a multitude of reasons, highest of which is for political purposes. But
yes,
that's what's happening, because so looking at the data, we can go back and look at the National Center for Education Statistics, which tracks our spending over the past 50 years. And we can see that in Texas, we have increased our per pupil spending by 166% when adjusted for inflation.
Yes.
166%. At the same time, we've only increased our teacher pay by 16%.
Well, and I have this chart. This is from the ERG data.
Okay.
And so you see the bottom line, student headcount hasn't changed that dramatically over 10 years.
That is right here. This is the purple. Student headcount, roughly the same, little bump.
Yes. The turquoise is teacher spending. That's teacher salaries. It's not keeping up with CPI, which is the black line.
Okay.
Administrative staff is yellow and professional support staff is red. So what is going on? What is happening?
That is crazy.
So there's your $7 billion. That, in addition to what's happening with the ESCs and all this other sort of strange things that we still have going on, even though we have all this technology.
This is our $7 billion right here.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I believe it. And we will put this up for our viewers.
Yes.
So...
And we don't, at Texas Transform, we don't think we should take that money out of the system. We think it needs to go back into teachers because, as you all know, teachers are the number one school side indicator of student success.
Right.
And our teachers, only 44% of Texas's new teachers are certified. And the way that you get good teachers is you certify them, you train them, you find reasons to keep them around, especially the high performers. Now, the education resource data does not show teacher data. And we think that that's because the TEA doesn't release that data because they're worried about student information, but the student information can be sanitized out and you can release teacher performance, which is a very, very sensitive topic. But and we don't want to release it to like nail the poor performers. We want to see who are the high performers, how do we elevate them, how do we find out what they're doing that works and socialize that great information across the system so the other teachers can learn from them.
Right.
And also because high performing people like to know they're high performing. They like to know how they measure up. And right now, teachers have no data on how they perform.
Well, and if they perform better, they should be rewarded.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the whole thing, is if you're performing better, you should be monetarily rewarded. And that is what should happen in the system.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. I'm looking at this explosion in professional support staff and administrative staff. And I think it's really important to note. And I've actually had this conversation with a lot of legislators recently, because the COVID funding that came through, just a massive dump of billions of dollars into the system. And even though leadership, the Department of Education, the Texas Education Agency all said, do not use this money to to add full-time employees.
Yes.
It's like they just put the la 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 la. That was kind of what they did. And so almost every district used the money, billions of dollars, to hire full-time employees and professional support staff, and locked into decades-long contracts, some of them. And now they're going, we can't afford anything. And it's like, well, why in the world did you spend all your money here instead of here?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, it also has to do, we talked about leadership and culture. It also has to do with the leadership of school boards. And how do we surface the right talent for school boards? And the way that we do it right now, which is the way we do every election, is we find the person who has the most name recognition and who has the most money to spend on a campaign. And that's how they get in those positions. There's no, they are not tied. Their job is not tied to student outcomes right now. There's some maybe changes coming on that with the school board.
Most of it is dealing, it's not. It's about bonds.
Yes. And so I want to get into bonds because it relates to what you just talked about. When you have part-time politicians who may not be qualified to run a billion-dollar entity, and they are running these multi-million and multi-billion-dollar entities, they are going to make decisions that they've never had to make before. Like, what do I do when the government gives me all this COVID funding? And as you know, I sat down with Mike Miles in the Houston ISD, and he was talking about how that happened in Houston, and they had planned for all this money to keep coming. The school board,
which is
Houston
nuts.
ISD is a $2.2 billion entity.
Right.
Why would they make such stupid decisions? It has to do with leaders. It has to do with finding people who are qualified to run these businesses.
Yeah.
Because they are businesses.
Right.
And until we start thinking about how we elect leaders to run our local businesses, we're going to continue to have these stupid problems.
Right. And I think, so a lot of it, and I would go back to the majority of people that run for school boards. Now, Houston ISD was a little bit different because there's a lot of nepotism and some things going on there. But on the whole, the majority of people run for it because they want to do what's great for their community and the kids and the teachers and their schools. That is
wonderful.
That is the large majority of the people that run for school boards, is they want to do it. But they're a professional this, or they're doing that, or maybe they're just a mom like me, or whatever they are. And so they are not prepared to go in and run and make decisions of a billion-dollar or multi-billion-dollar business, but that's what they're doing. So something that happened that is just really abhorrent and frustrating, because it has affected what's going on in our trustees, is back in 1995 when Ann Richards was the outgoing governor, and the people of Texas had, I don't even think they'd shifted, but they'd finally realized that where she had been and where things were going in education, which was being pushed to the far left, like radicalized teacher union control, all of that stuff, that's not where Texans were. So what they did, the Democrats, quite frankly, is they passed a law. After working it for multiple sessions, they passed a law called the Team of 8 language. And the Team of 8 language sounds real nice because we all want to be a team and do what's best for the kids. But what that did was that made the superintendents at equal level to the elected trustees. And they did it because, in theory, superintendents are being trained to do this very stuff that you're talking about. And they can come in and they should be an equal. And that's what the language was set up. But it really took away the power and responsibilities from our elected school boards, where that there are 7 of them, and then the trustees. And people don't realize the entities that are placing the superintendents and the administrators, the leadership in these ISDs, they've come from TASB's executive search, the Texas Association of School Boards. Moat Casey has an executive search. Welsh and Gallegos, the law firm, has executive, like all these different executive searches that are tied into what I call the education cartel, and they're being placed in there, and then effectively they're the ones that are being driven to push and or make the decisions because they're the experts. But the numbers don't lie.
Yes.
There's a crisis. Somebody's not an expert.
Right. So part of what's happening with that system you just described is that in order to become a superintendent, you have to have been a teacher. Mm-hmm. So the problem with that, I love teachers. Okay. I did teaching for 4 years. I'm telling you, it's like one of the hardest jobs there is.
Yep.
And I think teachers should be paid a lot of money, and they should be the highest paid people in a school. I mean, that's on our platform. That's on our website.
Yeah.
But I will say this, a teacher is a very different skill set than a CEO. Yeah. And that superintendent is a CEO who's managing millions of dollars in facilities, managing millions of dollars of equipment, managing millions upon millions of dollars in headcount spend, and a bunch of policies, and has a fiduciary responsibility. And teachers, that is not the same skill set.
Right.
And so they're working their way up into that job. And I don't think that's the best path to become a superintendent. Yes. I think we need to be hiring business people, former military people, and Ashley and I, through Texas Transformed, are actually going to submit a rule. There is a way to become a superintendent without that. It's an alternative path, but they still make you do all the same training as if you had come up through teaching. So
Correct.
It's that's how they keep the cartel, as you described it. We call it the underbelly, but that's how you keep it all contained, is you control who can get that job.
That's right.
And they've become masters of controlling that loop. And so if you have these people who are trained to run a classroom, and suddenly they're being asked to run a $2 billion entity. Yeah. What are we doing? I mean, that's like the refrain you'll hear from me is, what are we doing?
Right.
Over
well, it's crazy. Why are we doing this? But there is a reason why, and it's because they need to maintain their control.
Yeah.
And the missing $7 billion. Or I would argue it's significantly more than that, because this is the thing about the superintendents. Now when you look at, and I've been doing this, I've been going through and looking at the bios posted online, especially for new superintendents that are being placed by any of the executive search entities. And almost every single one of them, within the first paragraph, they will tell you the bond that they passed in the previous ISD. Yeah. Almost every single one of them. That's
a resume builder.
That is a resume builder. Yeah. Is how much money could you go and convince taxpayers, which is, it's usually less than 10% of taxpayers that are voting on these bonds. I know people, I see you've got Prosper ISD right here, and we'll get to this, but we went and dug in deep into Prosper ISD, and there's a whole host of what I would say highly unethical behavior of how their bond, their massive $2.4 billion bond, passed, and it was with less than 10% of the vote. And it passed. Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the facilities are grand, but you look at what happened, and it was the architects, the engineers, and the construction firms that all funded Prosper for the Kids bond, or whatever they named the bond, and that then are the recipients of massive amounts of money. And we dug in to about a dozen districts looking at this. It's the same process. It's the architects, engineers, and construction firms. They fund the bonds. It's always something for the kids. And what we found was, for every $1 that they are investing, that they are paying into the bonds, they are receiving between $3,000 and $15,000 in return.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit of a take on that from a construction development perspective. So I'm a small to mid-scale developer. So we build projects that are between, and this is going to be small compared to these school builders. So we build projects like $3 to $10 million projects, and we build in tertiary markets. And in addition to that, we do project management, and we do something called owner's rep. So owner's rep is where you're a project manager of these big construction jobs, and ours are mainly for tenant construction. Like if you have an office user and they're going to build out their space, we go manage the process. Or if you have a warehouse and you need to build some office in it, we go manage that process. So what the owner's rep means is that we're not getting paid to build the thing. We're getting paid to monitor the spend and make sure everybody's aligned with the budget and the timeline. And we really have a fiduciary responsibility to have whoever owns this thing or whoever's building this thing, right? And so that's kind of my background and my job, and that's what my company does. We do not build schools, but the process is very similar for building schools. So I'm speaking to it from that place,
Right.
okay? Now, I will tell you, a couple of years ago, in 2021, we were hired by a logistics company who put 2 big buildings in Manor. And we did the land deal for them. We found the land, we entitled the land, we got the zoning. And as part of that process, we did some what's called pre-construction due diligence for them to figure out what it was going to cost them to build these two big 150,000 square foot facilities. These are tilt wall construction, not school.
Okay.
But so we ran a bidding process with architects and engineers and, GCs and the whole bit. We had 3 to 4 architectural firms put in bids. Those bids came in between $135,000, $155,000 to do all the architecture.
Okay.
I had a friend who was in business development with another architecture firm, and she said, please let my guys bid. And I said, don't they build schools? And she was like, yes, but they want to diversify away from schools. They want to get, they're way too in on schools. They need to spread out their portfolio. So I said, all right. So I sent them the bid package. They send me the numbers back. Their number was like $1.2 million.
Wait, so you had multiple 3-4 different bids come in for
From 135, 155.
Okay.
And then here comes this almost $1.2 million bid. And so of course, they didn't win. So we awarded, we said, if we do this guy's getting it. And so their guy calls me and he says, well, how'd we do? And I'm like, well, you were 9-10x over over what the winner got.
Right.
And he was like, well, why didn't you tell me?
There it is.
And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you should have just told me what it should be. And I was like,
there it is.
We don't actually run bids like that. We actually cause people to tell us what it should be.
That is it. That is it that I'm getting. That is it. And that is what I hear about all the time of how, because a lot in the school construction, I have spoken to those in school construction that will never speak on camera. And I have spoken to those in your field. And it's like this just commonly known thing is that you're getting 2, 3, 9 times the cost of things because they are coming back and they are used to the procurement teams, the planning committees, just calling whatever vendor, provider, contractor, architect, engineer, whatever, and saying, hey, we've got this that can do that. And it's essentially untraceable because it's a phone call.
Right. Well, the bigger issue to me was that their number started like this 1 point, almost 1.2, because I was like, how did you get to 1.2? And then they're like, well, this is how we bid. And I was just like, incredible. And I even joked, I'm like, I'm in the wrong business. We need to be building schools. Like,
right.
And so the other thing that's going on, there's a lot going on to this. This is not the bond issue is not a simple thing. It's not one person that's failing. It's not one piece of fraud. It's a whole system of things going wrong.
Yes.
And the number one thing going wrong is the leadership. And I'm talking about the school board. So when you are on a board of trustees, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers or to whoever's put you in that job to be stewards of that money.
Right.
And if somebody hasn't trained you on the word fiduciary duty, you don't understand that, right? I know I'm being a little bit, everybody knows what fiduciary duty is, but to be in that job and have to be accountable to that. And then you have the consultants who come in and start telling you, here's what a school should cost. Hey, let us put together your packaging and your marketing for your bond. Well, guess what? The marketing people are tied to the construction people. They're all they all play golf, right? They all play golf together.
Or they're sometimes the same person. So
maybe they're the same person. So yeah, there's that. So you've got these layers of things happening that if you're an elected person who was, no offense to stay-at-home moms. I was a stay-at-home mom for my kids' 5 years of being before school. But if you're a stay-at-home mom and you want to run for a school board and you get on a school board and suddenly your job is to make sure that you're exercising your duty. Like, how do you know what the rules, like, how do you shield yourself? How do you prevent yourself from getting in these weird entanglements with these vendors?
You can't, because here's the well, you can, but they don't, because here's the thing, and this is the way the system is set up. Yeah. So I go to the Texas Association of School Boards all the time because I think they are an abhorrent entity, and it's because they own all these other entities, and or they're on the payroll, and or they're facilitating and or steering massive amounts of taxpayer money, but also knowledge to our trustees. And here's why. They own conferences that they are sending. They have 4 a year. It's quarterly, but then you throw in TASA, the Texas Association of School Administrators. You throw in Moat Casey. They do an assessment conference. You throw in, there's multiple. It's literally every month that someone from a school district can go, and they're mandated to get 12 hours.
And those are the trainers. They're teaching them about fiduciary
and this is what happens. So let's talk about the TASB conferences. So they're not just giving them in the board book that they own, which is the manual, the guidance for how to run a school board. But they also get them and say, you could, in theory, do your training online, which would be the fiscally responsible thing as a good steward of taxpayer dollars, but that's not fun. So we will have conferences at the JW Marriott.
Yeah.
We will have them at Kalahari Water Resort. We will have them at Lost Pines. We will have these grand conferences. And who is at these conferences? You know. Who's at these conferences? Who are the largest vendors at these conferences?
Well, I can tell you about the one that's coming up in September in Houston.
Yep.
All of the largest vendors, all of the largest sponsors are architects, engineers, GCs that build our schools. It's also layered in. So my kid goes to a high school that just passed a bond to build another high school. They had to actually come back and resize it. But the way they got the bond passed, they ran it by the voters the first time, which included this massive stadium, right? Because we need another football stadium.
Right.
So they had this massive bond. It failed.
Right.
So the next go around, they brought it around again, but they separated it out. So they put the new high school, but they attached in that bond all the safety things that had to be done to the schools, the required things.
Yes.
So we got the new high school passed, right?
Right.
Well, our high school, like most high schools, has a charitable organization so that because of Robin Hood, which is a whole other debate. They raise money that can stay in the district.
It's an education foundation. Pretty much every district has this, and they can push money through it.
So we have an education foundation, and the largest donors to that education foundation around the time of this bond issue, surprise, surprise, are GCs and architects and engineers that build our schools.
Yes.
And they go around, some of my friends work at these firms, and they go around and you'll see on their socials with these big signs, oh, we're supporting whatever ISD and we love our community and whatever. And then the bond passes and they're also the ones advising them on what the building should cost. So if I am a builder and I come to you and I say, I'm going to build you a building that's going to cost $50 million, and you're going to go put together a bond package that says it's $50 million, and then you're going to come back to me and ask me to bid on it. Guess what my bid's going to say?
$50 million. Well, and that is probably the problem. I said sometimes earlier, I mentioned that sometimes they're the same people. This is the case. We're seeing, so for example, one of the largest architecture firms in the country, I believe they advertise themselves as the third largest architecture firm building schools in the country, is called VLK Architects. And they're K through 12 specialists. His title is Principal K through 12 Specialist, is a gentleman by the name of Scott Milder. So he's an executive, a senior person at this massive, massive architecture firm that are building the majority of the schools here in Texas, or at least in the top one or two. I don't know. They go back and forth between Huckabee and Associates. But anyways, so that's what Scott Milder does. And then I guess on his free time, I don't know. His side hustle is he and his wife also run an organization called Friends of Texas Public Schools. And you'll see them posting, and they're with all of the education people and always at the conferences and partnering with radical leftist nutcases at Pastors for Texas Children to hold education conferences. And what the wife does, Leslie, she gets up in front of districts and school teachers and does like a pep rally for them. And tells them, along the lines of vote for teachers, vote for public schools, like it's a wink and a nod thing. And then the payment or something for her showing up is then paid not to Friends of Texas Public Schools, but there's some payment. It's a lot of times between $20,000 and $50,000, and it goes to their communications firm that they own. And then their other side hustle, I think it's called Common Sense Communications, and that's also Scott Milder. And then their other side hustle outside of VLK Architects, Friends of Texas Public Schools, which you see the billboards, good things are happening in Texas public schools, like that's them. And then their other side hustle is called Friends Consulting Group. What do? Well, they show up and make friends with the trustees, and then they teach them and tell them how that they can plan a bond. And not only are they going to help you plan it and figure it out, they're going to run the election, the communications strategy, and help you figure out what size school you need and all of this stuff. And we will guide you, we will shepherd you through this process through Friends Consulting Group. And that's what happened. It's kind of ironic you have Prosper ISD right here because Friends Consulting Group is on there, and then you can just look and see the money flow, and it's like,
yeah.
Like, I got a lot of energy. I joke and tell people that I, run off caffeine, Jesus, and makeup. And I look at that and I'm like, how in the world are you doing all of this
makeup?
This is nuts. And it is.
Yeah.
And that is one person. That is one person, but each firm has them. And their whole job is to go befriend. And they're doing it at these conferences. They're hosting casino nights where you can win a Yeti and drink all night for free. They're hosting football nights. I'm sure football, because it'll be going on. That's the house, because people want to do business with their friends. And they make you their friend. Right. And they tell you you're great. And then they sell you on an idea that you need a Taj Mahal. And don't worry, we'll get it passed. We know that we only need, roughly around 10% of people to show up. And that is what this system is totally rigged.
Yeah. And there's that couple. This happens, to be fair, on both sides of the political aisle. And there's people everywhere taking advantage of the lack of leadership, the lack of transparency, the lack of training of board members. And it's a giant mess. You're right.
It's a giant mess. And the lack of fiscal responsibility. And that's where, this is where in the parent empowerment movement, it's also the taxpayer empowerment movement, because we want our teachers to be paid well for doing great things. Great teachers should be paid a great income, in my opinion. Bad teachers should be great teachers, which is few and far between. But I'm saying, there's this mentality that you got to protect these to elevate these. The reality is we should always be elevating the majority of teachers. And the system is set up. It's rigged. The system is rigged to always have the excuse to come in and say, but it's for the children and we need more money.
Yes. Yeah.
And it has to be more money because it's always for the children.
Yes.
And that has created this completely unsustainable bond cycle and debt accumulation.
Yes. So Education Resource Group that has all this data, this is just like the tip of the iceberg of the type of charts and graphs I can get for you. But one of them shows bond financing and the debt service and what's happening to Texas schools and Texans with this debt service problem. And it's really massive. And there's a big argument. This is going to get into a crazy ball of wax, but school buildings. Okay. So let me use an analogy. So if you look at surgeons and how surgeons work, a lot of them, if they don't work in a hospital, they get together in groups and they run practices, and surgeons are the highest paid people in the surgery center, right? Because they're the ones doing the surgery. Mm-hmm. And they hire the administrative staff that they need, and they build a building themselves or whatever, or they lease a building, and they run their surgery center. Well, could you imagine if someone came in and tried to tell the surgeon hey, we're going to make you the lowest paid person in the school building, except the janitor. We're going to tell you how to do surgery. We're going to give you a manual with a script on how to do surgery, even though you're a trained surgeon. And we're going to let your staff, your admins, tell you how to run things, right? So that's essentially what's happening with schools and teachers. Teachers are like the surgeons in that scenario. We should never be giving them scripts. We should never be doing those things. And I'm going to suggest that there's another way to even do school buildings. This is not on our Texas Transform platform. I'm just suggesting that if teachers got together and started their own schools, and this is actually happening. So I work in an office building that's like a shared office building. I mean, it's like a co-working office space, right? And we have private offices, but it's a co-work. So there are parents who are hiring teachers to come and teach small groups of kids, and they're paying them $100,000 to $150,000 to teach these small groups of kids, and the teachers are running that show, and it's happening in my office building.
I believe it.
And this could be a future. And now three education chairs ago, there was a guy who wrote a book about this and about teachers. And he suggested that teachers should actually be doing this, and teachers should actually be running the schools. And he had a whole plan for it. Nobody will listen to him because, we got to sell bonds.
Well, that's it. And that's exactly right. It's interesting that you say that it's happening now, because I know it's happening now. And those are the same families that joined the parent empowerment movement and pushed for education savings accounts. And these are the same families that are going to lead the way, pave the way for great teachers that have said, I don't need a $150 million track and field stadium like they're building and have built at Crawley ISD. I just want to make sure that my kids are well educated. They can do their extracurriculars. That's right. They can read. They can do math. They know civics and history. I mean, so because right now, across the state of Texas, 50% of kids can't read on grade level.
Yes.
60% can't do math on grade level, and 70% cannot do civics and history on grade level.
Right. That's because they can't read it. So
that's exactly correct. They cannot read it. Well, and a lot of it, when we look at ELA, when our English language arts exams, it's because they have no ability to comprehend what they're actually looking at. They might be able to functionally make out the words, but they have no internalization of what did they just read. That's exactly right. And that's why we have to give more power to teachers and to parents. Yes. And that really is what this is about is, look, I'm glad that you like Friday Night Lights, but we shouldn't be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on football stadiums and then also on track and field stadiums. We also shouldn't be building buildings that look like they're on college campuses. That is not being a good steward of taxpayer dollars. It is not. And that's not where education should be moving. It's going to move. And that's with the passage of the education savings accounts. You're going to have more teachers go, wait a second. You mean that I can start a school and run it how I want and make sure that these kids are educated and their parents can handle all the extracurriculars, but we're going to make sure all of this, and that's what we're going to see. It is going to revolutionize education.
And they're going to start showing their own data. They're going to have case studies and proof stacking that says, hey, I took this kid in 6th grade, I became their teacher, and now this kid's at whatever school and they've done this with their life. They're going to be about outcomes, and that's how they're going to get clients, and they're going to become pretty wealthy doing it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these problems we're seeing, like with this whole system and this whole government, thing, is that, we have to continue going to the ledge and asking for things. But to be honest, to go there and ask for things is very expensive. Mm-hmm. To get a bill passed, you probably know better than I do what the number is. It's very, very expensive. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of fundraising, and it's, all these donors, like if their money was going toward innovation of schooling, we would rapidly bypass what the government's doing, and everybody would be doing the new innovative thing. Yeah. So I think that the path forward has to be twofold. We have to keep going back to the ledge and fighting for these things that you're fighting for and that we're fighting for at Texas Transformed, which is 18 areas of reform. But we also have to be innovating. We have to be innovating around it. And there's tons of people innovating around it. There's, because of what's happening with AI, because of what's happening with the passage of ESAs, because of all these new things in education, we've never lived in a time where you could learn so much for free online.
Right.
The thing that we need to innovate around, I think, that the problem that we need to solve is that the reason we have 5.5 million kids stuck in this loop is because mom and dad have to go to work, and those kids need a place to be.
For a lot of them.
And so if we can start figuring out how to solve that, we can, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, that's like a big gazillion-dollar question I'm asking myself because, my kids have to go to school every day because I have to go to work. They are going to places where the college system is sort of giving us the path of what kids have to study in schools. To get into the college, you have to have these XYZ classes. Texas Transform, we're proposing this whole thing about 5 pathways through high school, 5 different ways to get through high school. And because the colleges are telling the high schools what they have to graduate, we have all these kids doing the exact same thing. So my point is, I think the future of schooling is highly customized. We're going to have to get to overcome this finance problem we have, to overcome this corruption problem we have, this waste problem we have. People around it are going to have to innovate and do things that we've never done before in schooling, that we've never imagined, to take it to like the next place.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And I think that it's about empowering parents with knowledge and also options.
Yes.
And that's really what this is all about, is it's about explaining what's going on, but here's what it could look like, as well as teachers. I mean, to your point about being able to, in the building, or the WeWork style office building, in the church facility, in whatever, you actually can put together your own micro school.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of parents that are looking for that. You can put together a micro school. Something that's happened in Florida, which is amazing, is that a lot of special education teachers have said, look, these environments for kids with special needs, particularly autism and things like that, they need to be in highly curated environments. They need to be in environments with different behavioral specialists. We need to recognize that it is not inclusive to throw them in a classroom with a bunch of kids that are going to actually ostracize, ignore, or drive them crazy, whatever it is. This is the way of the future. It is about truly customizing an education so that every child is in the environment that will best serve them to prepare them to launch, as opposed to just herding them through a chute where they all come in at the end, and that the rigged system has funneled all the money into a few people's pockets.
Right.
So okay. I feel like we could there's so many other things that we can cover, but this is amazing data that we will share and be able to point our viewers to, of where they can go find it, what that they can look at. But before we wrap up, I want you to look in that camera and talk to the parents of Texas that maybe they want to customize education, or they want to know the other options. Talk to the leadership of Texas, the legislators that are there, that need to have open and honest conversations about what we have to do, I would say, to save the future of Texas, because the debt is unsustainable. The lack of academic achievement is unsustainable. The property taxes are completely unsustainable. We have to do something to course correct, and we have to do it now. Tell them what they got to do.
So for the legislature, I would say, if you're serving at this time, you're serving at the greatest time to be in office, I think, in Texas. So many good things have passed. So many good things are happening. Texas, as you know, is number 1 for jobs. It's number 1 for economic development. It is number 1 for people moving. People move from other states to Texas more than anywhere else. We have our own power grid. We have now our own stock market. We have a governor that continues to say, and I support, that we should be the number 1 state for schooling in America. The truth is, as you all know, that we're number 44 in schooling. So how can we be number 1 in all these things and be number 44 in schooling? And we have to start taking action around leadership and culture. And the first step in that is taking this education resource group data and institutionalizing it. And maybe you don't reveal it to every parent, but you at least start putting it in place so that everybody's accountable to it, and you can start seeing who's performing at the highest level and start socializing the things they're doing across the entire system. That's step 1. And ensuring that we have the right people in the right seats in our schools and our school boards. And then to parents, I would say, you have the very hardest job. Parenting is the number 1 indicator of student success overall. Teachers are the number 1 indicator of student success on the school side. And so I would say that, especially as a working parent, the number one thing I would suggest that you do is be hyper vigilant about being involved in your kids' school and trying to understand what they're learning, who's teaching them, what are the outcomes, like what are the outcomes not just for your kid but the whole school, because it's a system. And look for ways that you can find, people who are innovating around what you want your kids to learn. Every kid doesn't have to have the same education. We don't have to have this assembly line where every kid gets this specific thing and then goes off to, whatever the plan is, college or whatever. But kids can do different things. And I have 4 kids. They have 4 completely different educations. And so I would just say get super involved, take creative risk around schooling and try to find solutions that work specifically for your kid. So,
Robbie, thank you so much. I am so grateful to have you here. And you and Ashley are making waves here in Austin, which are going to improve the lives of so many kids. I'm so grateful that Texas Transformed have entered into this space, bringing your business acumen for both of you, as well as your heart as a mother. Yeah. And thank you for all that you guys are doing. I'm looking forward to working alongside you, cheering you on, and really making some great things happen for the kids of Texas. Thank you for joining us today on Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. And now you have the power.